Good evening, this is Mary Kay DeCoursey, Chair of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:36 on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. This is an open meeting of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. It's being conducted in a hybrid model in order to allow members of the community to join us via Auburn Town Hall in the planning room. Oh, sorry, I should have added that, in the Merriam Room at Auburn Public Library, or to join us remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location due to the COVID-19 virus. The agenda that includes the link, the telephone number, and the access codes for this meeting was posted on the Auburn Town website on Monday, October 31st, 2022. Permit me to confirm that members of this body and persons anticipated on the agenda are present. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Matt Toth.
Present.
Suzette Dowd.
Present.
John Danilowitz.
Present.
Vera Corain. I'm Mary DeCoursey, and present. Town employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jean Collins, Library Director.
Present.
Present. We will turn to the first item on the agenda. I've provided everybody with the meeting minutes prepared by John on the October 5th meeting. Can everybody take a look at the meeting and see if we can approve the minutes from the last meeting? Does everybody have them?
I have discussion.
We haven't made a motion yet. We can't have a discussion that we haven't.
I'll make a motion that we pass the meeting as is, or
Okay.
with
Do I have a
discussion,
second?
after discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, second. And we just go through the roll call?
Let's do
No, wait a minute.
You want the discussion first? Okay.
So, it's more of a clarification of context. Under 3E, John, it's more like it's two items when, and it's okay to say that I requested assistance from AFD and APD for security training for staff, but it's not necessarily aligned with, in context of the designation. That's a separate issue.
Okay.
So if you just wanted to split that up into two items or something, it's not, we're not doing the training, you know, to prepare to be an alternate site, we're doing the training as something that we do operationally, just to.
So you would do the training,
So we
so
done-
so you're not doing training because you're designated as an alternate site?
Right, I mean, we want to make sure we do that, but that's not the purpose of the training.
So do you want me to
Training
just
is-
delete in the context?
I mean, I think I
of
did mention that, so you could always add it as an under, another
Okay.
item
I
or
can
something,
make
because I
that.
did mention it in the, but it was in relation to
Okay.
the security
Alright,
training,
sure.
so that's just a clarification.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just get rid of that, the last part of that sentence.
Yeah, it's probably good.
Any other discussion on the October 5th minutes?
No, but I think there's a lot of good information in this, and there's a lot of follow-up that has to happen with a lot of these items. But please think about that for the next meeting.
Okay. Do you mind being specific about a few items?
Well, I was wondering, some of the collaboration with the senior center, what that meant. Somehow I forgot what that meant.
Book club.
Oh, the book club, okay. All right. That's,
What's the other one? That's a breezy lighthouse or something like that?
States, which is community here.
okay. Oh, like updates on the teacher plan and the library director's goals. That's just ongoing on the agenda.
Okay, for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other discussion?
We make a motion over again now to accept it with the change?
No, we can just vote now.
Okay, so I'll just do a roll call. Matt Toth,
Yes.
Suzette Dowd,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Vera, welcome. I just want to point out that you are here with us tonight.
Thank you, and yes.
Yes, and I support this as well. So unanimously, we are approving the minutes from October 5th. In the last meeting, we had a conversation about going on with our interest in inclusion, diversity, and diversity, inclusion, and there's one other word.
Equity.
Equity, thank you, I forgot that one. And we had a discussion about what we do in town, what the library does, but also what happens in town for individuals, whether they're children, young adults, or adults with special needs, or any other disabilities. So I invited a few people from our community to come and join us. I was hoping, Vera, if we could slide around a little bit to allow, we have Liz LaFrancois, and we have Zach DeLuca. Do you want to come right up and join us?
Would you like me to slide too?
Yeah, just slide this way. Is it okay if I come this way? Oh, you come, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize they go to that. I didn't even see that over there. We could, this works better, I think, for all of us. So I actually met Liz LaFrancois when she reached out for people to collaborate with her in special needs programming. So I reached out about a year and a half ago, was it?
Yeah.
And she's here tonight to just talk about, work that you've been involved with special needs children, advocating, developing programs. And I had the pleasure of meeting Zach DeLuca as a volunteer. I actually volunteered as the head coach with the Snow Squalls, and we'll talk about that. But Zach is amazing at engaging students and not being phased if they're sort of resistant to the activity. So I'm just going to hand over to Liz LaFrancois. Thank you.
All right. Hi. Good night, or good evening. Sorry, it's been a long day. So I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about what I've been working on. I apologize if I pause. I'm having some tooth pain. I should have the dentist before I got here. So I have a daughter. I have two daughters, and one of them plays hockey, and we are a big hockey family and enjoy that sort of activity. Got to meet lots of different people, both here in Auburn and around town. And then my 7-year-old also was really engaged, interested. It was a very accepting environment. She has some challenging behaviors that other people could definitely be intimidated by. She's not quiet. And it always felt like a kind of a second home. The rink always felt like a second home, so it just made sense that when we were pursuing activities, we've done horseback riding, we've done swim, we've done soccer, let's try hockey, and there's no special needs hockey programs out there in the area. So you'd have to drive an hour plus, and then usually if you go to the rink, you get there before the time that you're supposed to be on the ice. So this just didn't make any sense to me that we don't have something that could be an option. So I started doing a little research. I never have played hockey. I also am not a business person, so I just kind of went in with the mentality, if you build it, they will come, in hopes that there was somebody other than my daughter that would enjoy this activity, which is exactly what happened. The nice thing about it is, other than being over 5, there's no limits. You can be 25 with an intellectual disability, you can have spina bifida and be in a wheelchair. Everything is sort of meant that with the idea that it's not necessarily skill-based or age-based, but it's really meeting the individual where they are. So whether it's having somebody be just working on getting a helmet, that's a really big challenge for a lot of the kids to have a helmet, and that's safety is #1. So you don't have a helmet, you don't get to go on the ice. But we had lots of different approaches and different ways. Parents and I troubleshooting, try it for 5 minutes with their favorite program, or try it, with their brother, and then see if they'll put it on. And really the idea was just to create this. And at first it was small, because it was, I think when we really got on the ice was January 2022. And it was after Christmas, and there was this really big spike, so I wasn't really sure if that was a good tell or how it was, but it was really well received. We had people donating ice for us. Ice is very expensive. We had people donating equipment, so there was this real sense of community. Everybody kind of wanted to, how can I help? What can I do? We were able to get Mary, and the second time on the ice, there was a lot more people. Kind of everybody who had COVID came. It had been enough time in between activity, and you know, I got to have parents come up to me and say things like, I never thought that this would be something they would like. I never thought we'd get a chance to do this, or this just makes me feel like a sense of, you know, whether they were crying tears or they were just happy that they got an opportunity, which I think for me is the biggest thing. It's not that every kid has to play hockey or that there has to be, it's just that when my 12-year-old without any special needs wants to do something, I research it, there's lists, there's options, she can pick, she can choose, and then there's this little crevice of opportunity, and I refuse for that to be a life my child grows up in. I want her to have anything, and if she doesn't want to do this, I would still continue it, because all we've done is grow. And then this past season we included junior coaches, just because that component of kind of having friendships, for them to be out there with their peers. A lot right now, our average age of individuals is between 10 and 15, so we were lucky enough to get Zach and a bunch of other sort of local skaters, whether they were hockey or ice, what's the other, skating, figure skating, thank you, to come out. And it was really cool because it looked like everyone, I'm not a skater also, so on top of this I don't skate. I just am really strong-willed, and if I want something I usually try really hard to get it if it can be achievable and realistic. So it was really cool to kind of see this whole thing develop, and then for people to say to me, when is the next time? And if he doesn't want to be off the ice, what are our other options, what are out there? So I'm just looking to see if there's anything out there in the interim where we don't have access to the ice. But I'll kind of, Zach, if you want to talk a little bit about maybe your experience and what that was like from your vantage point.
So we would, my family and I would get ready to go. Saturdays at 9 a.m., October 1st, 8th, 15th, and the 20th. I think I could only have made 3 out of the 4 just because I had hockey conflicts already. And I went with my sister every day, every Saturday. And we were like looking forward to it. We were like, all right, this is awesome. We get to go have fun with these kids and just play hockey. The aspect with everybody there, it was so like inclusive. You just didn't feel like you were forced to be there. You were there, just like willingly. It was amazing. It was very well run, very well run. The fact that everybody there knew exactly how to behave and how to be themselves around everybody was like probably the most important thing. Because if you go there, you're not exactly sure what you're doing. You're doing like an outcast. Everybody just worked together beautifully and was very, very compatible and inclusive. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was great for me.
You know, the program sounds really very interesting, and I like the language that you use. Can you tell us what you think the library might be able to offer some of the children that you've worked with?
Mm-hmm. So in my professional experience, I worked with kids with special needs for 20 years and went to graduate school for that. Right now I work in a preschool in town, and I work in early intervention, so I'm very much always around different situations and different sorts of opportunities, or just to see the barriers. That's the other thing. Honestly, I mean, I had a conversation, we had met in August or the end summer.
Yeah, with the time we said we'd pick it up again in the fall, because we did actually have a conversation about perhaps starting a parent advisory group, and we were just going to pick this up again in the fall and to see where, because we discussed a few things and just kind of getting started with it. So, yeah.
What I've been trying to do is go to my junk, because that's where the library stuff ends up. I'm sure there's a way not to do that, but I always check my junk. So it goes to my junk, and I don't know why. I'm like, oh. So I look through, and I think all of the programs and opportunities that are there are great. I think that one of the things that we talked about is just trying to figure out a way to make it, so I know that the library is open to everybody, right? That's like, I feel like a pretty well-known thing, that there's not like only these people and only these groups. But as a general barrier for somebody, and all the people I kind of talk to and ask them what they're doing in the community, what are you doing this weekend, how are you gonna get out there? you know, there's certain language I think that we all kind of look for, and it's things like sensory friendly. There's lots of activities out there that, you know, like if you go to a movies, they'll say there's also a sensory friendly viewing, and that kind of makes your little, you know, your brain go, ooh, maybe my kid could go to that movie. There might be a chance, and if they get a little upset, it will be okay. Even though the library's, you know, I mean not the library, the movie is, you know, a place that you should be able to go whenever you want to go. There's going to be things that aren't going to make it more challenging for maybe that particular family. So I think, you know, some of those things are good, or just adapt it a little bit. Maybe not as much, you know, there's things that they're going to get out of it, even if it's not necessarily the way that it was presented for the original crew that you had in mind. You know what I mean? Like the slime's like a really great. Is that right? Did I read that right? A great sort of thing. You know, you can explore that in such a way that, other than putting it in your mouth, there's really no wrong way to do it. So I think that sometimes it's just, you know, kind of being, you know, making those connections with like the CPAC, right? Because those group of parents are stuck kind of in their rut, in their routine. We go to the doctors, we go to IP meetings. We don't go anywhere because it's either stressful, embarrassing, you know, and maybe your kid's getting older and it makes it harder for you to feel like you can access things.
This is where, I guess, both of you just mentioned, some kind of a parents advisory group would be really helpful in sharing information about the kinds of needs that you have and that the library could be able to support. Because my guess is, with all the different programs we have, there'd be, I would have no idea what those adaptations might be, but parents might be able to make suggestions, so that might be really good to continue working on trying to get that arranged so that you can actually start talking about it. Because when you take a look at all the programs that are run, there have to be some that children with special needs could access. I
There are
don't
in
know.
fact a lot of children with,
I'm sorry?
it's not always visible, there are a lot of children with special needs or on the spectrum who are at our programs often. So, and sometimes sometimes parents disclose that to me, and sometimes they don't. But there is in fact a wide range of people, you know, children with special needs. And adults, we've had, and adults as well. So,
But
what
this is
Liz
where
and I
parents
talked
group-
about was furthering the discussion.
And so that the library is accessible. We made a big deal about inclusion and equity and diversity. And so I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think.
I love your energy.
Thank you.
You know, you certainly didn't wait around for somebody else to do it. That was good.
No.
Not at all.
Whether I don't know hockey or skate, I was gonna make this happen. You know, I think one of the things that is a pretty, I mean, from my vantage point, someone else could say that this is an easy thing that has been generally helpful for a lot of different families is just like social stories. I don't know if anyone knows what those are, but they just kind of, they can be done either video or a book that's more tangible that somebody can take and just kind of introduce, you know, the library, different things. So some kids are going to come, and it's not going to be visible. They're not going to wear a shirt that says "I have autism," right? And that's okay too. But then, if I can't remember the numbers, it would be really great if I could. But the number of kids in town that are on an IEP or a 504, the number is a big number. And so, are we accessing all that, or do all of them know to check their spam? Or do all, you know, like just different things like that. But, you know, a social story is a good way to kind of, what does the library look like? How is that, what are the expectations when we're in the library? Sometimes, I know one of the things we talked about was, you know, my daughter's loud. And so maybe if parents knew for those loud kids that if we had a program and they were loud, it would be okay to come, that might reduce their, you know, they might be like, wait a minute, maybe if that's okay. You know, you kind of have this preconceived notion of what it's going to be before you get here, even as a parent, and that could be the barrier, that to go like, no, it's okay if they need to stand up and do the activity. We're going to work with you, you know, just to let that be more known. because you probably know it, because that's what you're behind the scenes, so you get to do that part of it, where it might not be as known.
In fact, that's something that we state during almost every program, and the parent might be like, oh, my child won't stop me. We make a very strong point of that is okay. They're exploring where they need to be. When they're ready, they'll settle down. Almost, and Jared and I do the toddler programs, and pretty much all the time, we're making sure parents know that. And we do have some children who are loud sometimes. It doesn't faze us at all, and I've never seen any parents or anybody get, upset with that or anything either. So we do try hard to make sure that, it does feel inclusive. In fact, when you mentioned the sensory, we actually have sensory boxes in our children's programs. We sanitize everything. They each get their own box. It's different every time. They really look forward to it, and that's some children you can tell some things they don't want to touch, and that's all part of general experience for everyone. So I think that we do try to integrate it that way. But you and I talked about looking at it from a different lens and kind of seeing where we could go to kind of spin off of that, I think, and I think that's very worthwhile, that we'll continue to see if we can set up our meetings and see what we want to do with that.
Zach, how'd you get involved in this?
My mom sent me an email. I've been involved in the Special Olympics since I was probably like 10. One of my really good friends, Tyler McGo, he goes to Auburn. I am currently homeschooled, but I'm still very involved with Auburn. I do unified basketball. I'll do track if not playing lacrosse. Me and Tyler have been really close since about 10 years old. I actually went to Special Olympics Florida with him. It was June. Over in June, we went as part of the school. We got picked to represent Massachusetts as YAC, Youth Activation Council. So we went as a group. It was me, Tyler, and our ambassador, Eric. We went together as a group in Massachusetts. There was bocce team, football team, basketball team, running, cross country, and track and field. That was all special needs and had their partners. We went with them, and every day we were in Florida or Orlando. Our entire Olympic Village was Disney Orlando, and we'd be shuttled from there to ESPN Worldwide every day. We would have meetings with everybody from all 50 states, Hawaii, everywhere. Antarctica was crazy, and we would basically learn everything that they're doing in their community, and we would take it back to our community and broadcast it out. Make any changes, see what other states are doing, other towns, and how they're doing, and we can take that back and give it out and just make better changes.
So this hasn't been short term in your
No, not at all.
Well, nice, Bill.
Back to answer your question, my mom sent me an email, and I was interested because it's like, this is what I do. I play hockey. I'm doing Special Olympics, special hockey. It doesn't really get any better than that, right?
Right.
It was great. We show up to the rink almost as if who asked earlier about what it was like to piggyback with what you said, and there are sleds there. There's everything that you need to make it easy and accessible. Exactly, and it was probably perfect. It couldn't get from any range. It was probably spot on, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So can I just highlight a little bit? When I first met Liz, she had a vision, and her vision was, and it really moved me, that if a student just was able to put on the helmet and they felt comfortable with that, but we needed to respect the fact that that was the goal for that student. If another individual was in a wheelchair, we had to figure out a way to make that safe for a person to utilize a wheelchair and have someone to skate with. We had students that even though their special need is not the acting out, the way that they've learned to sort of control settings is acting out. So what I was most impressed with from the vision that you had, this was back I think March of 2018 or 19, to being at a rink 4 weeks in a row where some of the individuals were nonverbal and they utilized a wheelchair. Zach and some of his junior coaches would skate with the individual, where a few of the other junior volunteers would pass the puck back and forth. We had individuals who just really needed to skate with one person, And what was amazing to me, and it caught my attention completely, is we had one young person who his way of not having to do something was to sort of cry and melt down, and I loved the way that you went up there and you were like, no man, this is what we're gonna do, yep, get that out of your system, come on, we're going. And then setting a goal with, now you're 15 years old, right? You're gonna be 16 in February, you told me, right? That's amazing. Your confidence, not only in yourself, but your confidence in that young person that you were working with, an 11-year-old boy. So it is amazing. It's amazing from the vision that you had, Liz, to seeing all these people on the ice. And there were some of us, in my 50s, you had volunteers in their 30s, you had junior volunteers that were very committed every week. It was so community focused. And every student had a blast. And by the last practice, we actually had a mini game. Because the concepts we had to keep building, but I had to bring you both here because that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Figuring out what can we do that everybody can have a place or a moment or, and feel safe in that space. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Does the board have any other questions at all?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I hope you take an aspirin and go home for that toothache.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Amazing. Zach, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
That was great, Zach. Just wonderful. I'm so moved. So thank you again, and the director's report on number 4.
Before we get to
Yeah,
that,
please.
just a couple things.
Yep.
Anything further on the question of the month and the dissemination and
So
responses?
I posted it on several sites, but I have to be honest, like the footwork of doing it and going back and picking up the commentary, that's where I struggled a little bit. So I think I just was talking about it at one of the subcommittee meetings, and one of the things that Vera talked about was how we could, instead of going around or putting it online, how we could make it accessible. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
I had my crazy little idea where I was like, all right, you guys don't want to be in the position of having to ask people to fill out a survey, which I totally get, because you don't want to bias anyone. I have to leave a good review because, oh my God, and we're not getting a lot of engagement online because, and I see the questions posted, there's just not anybody engaging with those posts. So I thought, what if we put a box in the lobby with, either people can fill out a slip or a QR code, that way you guys don't have to even interface with the people who may or may not answer. A little box in the corner which says, the Board of Trustees, question of the month. If they want to do online, they can get the QR code. If they want to do the little slip of paper with a pen, great, off of your shoulders. And we're getting feedback from the people who come to the library.
Right.
Of course, we will not get people who are out in the community ignoring our posts.
Right.
But the point is, they're already out in the community ignoring our posts, so I guess that's okay.
I also last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, I asked the committee if people would be interested in having actual email addresses, and I'd forgotten about that because that was probably before the pandemic, probably 2.5 years ago. But there wasn't interest in that body at that time, but what I'm going to do in addition to, I love that idea. I love it because it would engage people that are digitally engaged and also people that are not, which is really what we want to do. But I think what I'd like to do is I will reach out again to Melinda and Deb and ask for an email address. And would anybody else on the board like one? So the way that works is we'd have the email address, but it would be attached to our own email. But we would only get things on that link that, from the outside that come in. So in other words, it's attached, the email address is attached to your own email.
So what you're saying is you would set up a email address for people to send comments,
Correct.
and then we would get a copy forwarded to an email address that we chose?
Correct. And I would be willing to have the email and just forward it out to the members, to review, but especially the question of the month, I thought would be a really nice way to get people engaged.
Yeah. I like it.
I can't imagine what would be a problem with trying to do that.
Right.
So it'd be a matter of having basically a lockbox with a space to be able to write, to have the question out displayed, and then to have the ability of people to write on it, but also to have a QR code, which is very simple, to be able to use your cell phone if you wanted to do it that way.
Is
Yeah.
that similar to that box that they're using for friends?
I would imagine, I
Yes.
mean, you know, listen, I'm pretty basic and with glitter, so it's like, even if we put a cardboard box and with glitter, whatever it takes to catch people's eye to be like, did you answer the question of the month yet, you know,
Yeah.
something like this, just to get a little bit of engagement, because, you know, people who come, we assume they like it here, but if there's anything that they wanna see more of, we also wanna know,
Yeah,
because, hey, everything that drives ideas is great. So it could be a lockbox, it could be a cardboard box, I'm not attached to the box personally, or which kind, I would like the box though.
Jean, do you have any thoughts on this now, or do you wanna get back to us and think about it, or?
I don't have any problem with it. I would say we actually tried that,
Yeah,
when we had the display about, for, I think it was, National Library Card Week. And we had a whole thing there about with little slips of paper, what do you like about the library? No one filled it out. And we know our patrons love the library.
right.
No one filled it out. It was embarrassing, so we took it down. So, but it was, you know, it was Library Card Month, and it was welcoming and everything, and no one, you know, they went over and looked at it, but they didn't. Our patrons like to talk to us. When we had the survey, we had multiple, you know, bookmarks with QR codes in the surveys, and very, very few were completed. They like to come to us. Here are my thoughts. They don't wanna fill it out. I'm certainly not opposed to you giving it a try.
Right.
I'm just,
yeah, I like the idea.
Okay, we can try it, but like, if you have any ideas for other ways to generate any sort of feedback, or any kind of like, you know, people are saying, like, it's totally tangentially, I went trawling through your periodicals, and I'm like, wow, you know, I would wanna see more of X, so if I told you that, could you bring that back to the board, and we could say, hey, should we talk about this, would that be appropriate?
there are layers of issues there
Yep.
for, if we're supposed to, I don't think you need them just on magazines or periodicals, but, so that, for instance, we used to have a lot, we cut back, everybody cut back, some libraries cut them out completely.
Yeah.
When we're back, when we have the expansion, we'll be looking at growing that collection again. So if somebody's looking for a particular title, people will just come up and tell us. It's complicated, a lot of titles merged, some of them are much more expensive now.
Yes.
So it's not of, sure, somebody wants this, let's add it in. I would want to say that to everything people want, but it would, you know, it would be a little bit complicated, and you can't always add them in the middle of the year, because we use an aggregator, so there's certain times of the year when you renew all of those. So it seems like a simple,
Right.
but there's always, you know, some other things to it. It certainly, I mean, people come up and see, I'm always out there talking to patrons anytime somebody's got, you know, I wouldn't say concerns, I just, anything, I'm very hands-on out there. That was one of my personal goals, to have a more direct connection with patrons. And they certainly feel very comfortable talking to staff as well.
So I would just be
So-
careful that we make sure that there's a distinction between the efforts that the library has to reach out to its patrons and solicit feedback and get suggestions, and that which we do as the board.
Yeah,
So I think if there's no objection, then the idea of a box in the lobby, so let's start with it and see what happens. But I think we just need to keep the two separate and
Okay,
avoid
yeah,
a
I agree.
perception that we're encroaching upon the library director's prerogative to do that.
oh yeah, totally fair, all right.
And I just want to expand and clarify, because what I said was not very articulate. So the purpose of, for instance, an email address for me would be if there was a post up and I could put the link up, people, I think that, I got some comments on the Auburn pages that, you know, is there a private box that you can put this in? So that was what I was thinking
Sure.
of that. But the piece that I was asking our membership is, we do have a, you know, both on the town site as well as on the library site, we're all board members. We could easily attach an email to, at the end of everyone's name. If they wanted it, if you didn't want it, it's the same with the Board of Selectmen. You know, they have their addresses, some of them include phone numbers, some of them are not comfortable with that. But I think if the goal is access and removing barriers, and say if somebody feels comfortable reaching out to Vera, but they don't feel comfortable reaching out to me, it may behoove us to create that access, so that you have, you know, Vera Perrine, and then you have your email address, you might get them, and then throughout the month, you'd be able to come to this membership and say, you know, some people in this neighborhood reached out because they were really excited about this program and they wanted to share it. But if we did that, we would have the opportunity to do what we're elected to do, which is really to reach out to the people and find out just what the pulse of the community is in terms of access to the library and sharing. So again, I'm going to ask for an email address with that purpose, that, you know, I'm not as comfortable putting my own email address on Facebook, but I would be very comfortable putting an email address where I was the chair of the Library Board of Trustees.
I think that's fine. I wait and see how it works for you.
Okay, okay, good. We can do that, and I can have it also added to our section on both the town page. I can just have an email address set up.
Oh, I'll take an email address.
Yep, okay, okay, great.
So that is that, and then on this, while this was interesting,
Mhm,
I think we do have to be careful.
mhm,
So we had talked previously about providing an opportunity for people who want to present something to
Mhm.
come to our meetings. If
Sure.
they're public meetings, and we
Sure.
can have a section of the meeting set
Mhm.
aside. I think though, it takes it in a different direction when we start inviting people to
Mhm.
come. So for example, I don't know if others have been made aware of this, but I wasn't aware until I saw the agenda that
Yeah.
somebody had been invited.
Yep.
And there's a risk that we stray too far from kind of our purpose as
Mhm.
we invite people.
mhm.
And then just frankly, as a matter of efficiency of time and kind of our work. So that would be the only thing I would say, is that while there may be opportunities in the future where it makes sense for us to invite somebody, I think that's something that should be a collective discussion first, and agreement that our time would be well served by inviting somebody to come, as opposed to anyone who wants to come to any meetings, always welcome to do that.
Mhm. But I think I was responding, I was responding exactly to the question at the last meeting, which was, I believe, Matt, you had the question, what are the opportunities in the community that are available to people with disabilities? And Liz had mentioned to me that she was very interested in being more involved in the library. And I happened to see her because I saw her every Saturday so I wasn't sort of going out on a ledge. I was responding to a question at our last meeting, and she is probably the most engaged individual in activism for people with disabilities that I know in the community. So I want to be very clear, it was linked right into that, and it wasn't that I asked her off the cuff. We were meeting, you know, I saw her, she was off ice, I was on ice every week, and it was just a beautiful example of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Sure, but it would have been simple enough to send an email when the agenda was being developed to say,
Okay,
here's a suggestion to follow up on our last meeting.
okay,
I'm aware of an individual who we could invite as the board,
okay,
and then we could have had a discussion on whether that made sense.
okay.
See, for me, I was glad to have them there.
Mhm.
Really, we have not talked about this thing in action. And I think her commitment to this and the young man's commitment to this is really important. And it's true, we're not saying that our programs are not available to people with any kind of disability or any difference, but are we proactive in that? And that's why I asked her, in what ways could the library make a difference for including children with differences? And then the biggest thing that she can say is the family, which it's a fine idea. I don't really think that was 15 minutes of wasted time. I think.
I'm not saying it was waste of time. I'm not saying that the subject isn't important, and I'm not saying that those weren't articulate kind of advocates for the subject. What I'm saying is that just as a matter of how we operate as a board, I think if it gets to the point where the board is inviting somebody to formally address the meeting, that should be a collective discussion or decision of the board, as opposed to if she had on her own shown up here tonight and said, can I have a few minutes to talk about these issues, which I'm passionate about, then we're in open meeting. I think that's all I'm saying, because otherwise, wants to stop any of us from saying, here's an issue I'm interested in, so I'm gonna invite somebody to come and speak at the next board meeting.
You know, if it's connected in any way with something that the library can do, I would say, great, go ahead and do it. If there's something that the library could offer the community that is something that's not being offered, or parents aren't aware that it's being offered.
Right.
But, I mean, I can understand if we're all of a sudden bringing in people and there's no connection to library or library services or library programs. And that's,
So, okay, wait, I have a question and also a middle ground, because your point is fair. We can discuss as a board, like, hey, we're discussing this issue, how about at the next meeting, we bring someone in to talk about it a little bit more? Perfectly reasonable, and that way we all have our expectations set. And then the flip side of that is, can we actually send that out over email, or is that a
Well, that's
public
what-
meeting
yeah.
rule
So-
and therefore?
When we had the
Training.
session with the training with the town lawyer, that was specifically mentioned as not a violation of the open meetings law, that deliberation about setting an agenda is something that we can do outside the open meeting kind of constraints.
Oh, so
But
the-
prior to that training, there was a lot
oh
of
my God.
very grossly general language, like, as though a few of us couldn't see each other and not talk to each other, and it was something that was pounded into us, which is why we had the open meeting law, so good question,
Yeah,
good
That's a
question.
very good question, and I'm glad you say that, John, and I hope you're right about it, because the heat that we took for several months
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
basically
Too much.
outrageous.
Too much.
So,
So we have it, we have it at least on record,
Yes.
that the lawyer did say, look at how much we've accomplished
There
already.
you go. Any other comments about that before we move to the number 4, which is the director's report?
Are we in on the box? Do I have to make a motion about the box, or are we good to go?
Oh, that's a good
Whenever you
question, that's a
I
good
think it's
question.
worth the motion.
I move that we have a box.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Can I do a roll call on that? On my roll call list, here it is. So Matt, you gave the second, Matt,
Yes.
Suzette?
Yeah.
John?
Yes.
Kara, Vera, excuse me,
Yes.
and Mary, yes. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Our friends of the library may have a box that we can give them,
Oh,
because
really?
we had one, and it wasn't big enough, they were selling so many books that the money was sticking out of. I don't know what happened to that box, but I'll find out.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
And it does have a lock.
Okay,
Neat.
very exciting.
Excellent. So we'll move on to number 4 on the agenda, director's report. Jean?
Yes. Is this on? So I'll just start a little bit with the facilities. We continue to have to keep replacing the ceiling tiles in the boiler room, so we need to replace those again. It seems to be an ongoing thing. We can't find what the leak is, but that's something we just have to live with for now. Under programs, I did give you some information about our Halloween program, which was our most successful one ever. And we prepared for that really for a couple of weeks, and it was a beautiful day, so we got lucky, and so many people attended. It was at least about 240 people, and all of those, when you consider they each stayed for about an hour or two, so we were jam-packed in this room, jam-packed in the children's room, outside. I mean, it was great, so we were very happy about that. We had more than 720 crafts taking place here, so there were, like I said, there was a lot of preparation.
That's a lot.
Yeah, in addition to over 200 activities in the children's room, in addition to scavenger hunts and, lots of other things too. We had 2 age groups for the scavenger hunts. The parade, we had music set up out there, so we had the bridge, the platform out there, the stage decorated like a Halloween bridge. So it was great. We're still getting very appreciative comments from everybody, so I think that's a good example of what we are as a community library. Brought in, lots of children with parents, grandparents, and so we felt, everybody was here. It was mandatory. We were here for about 8 hours on that day, even though we were open for 3, so that was very good. The second one that we do at that level is usually St. Patrick's Day, so we'll probably have to get started soon. Book clubs, so I just mentioned, we are now supporting in some different way for each one 4 different book clubs. The library, Windmill Estates started their own. We're supporting them on how to get the books and how to order the books and how to pick them up here and get the cards and so forth. The Senior Center and Mary G. Stone Complex. I also spoke with a student from high school who has sort of initiated the book club. I asked her to get in touch with me so I can help support the way she's doing it, because she's a little bit at risk putting them under her name. But I'm more than happy to do that. I think that's great that they've got one going there too, and I think it's wonderful that there's a lot of outreach from the library with all of these, different places in town, so it's great.
You run these book clubs?
We don't run them necessarily, but we support them in quite a few different ways. And book club's a little bit different, and they're kind of getting started, so I helped them get started at Mary D. and the Senior Center, and the Windmill Estates, they have a representative there too, so. And, you know, the one here has been grandfathered in, so because they, so we do support them, you know, in different ways for each one. So we also, the comment of the month, we thought, well, we should just, we hear comments all day, every day, and so we thought, you know, let's just see where those go, and so, the decorations, people love the decorations. Fall's a great time to decorate because the colors are so vibrant, so people really like seeing it. Adds to that welcoming, you know, approach to the library. And again, a lot of comments about the Halloween program. So starting tomorrow at 9, we will have we haven't been able to do it for a couple of years, so we're really excited about having the children back again. All of the kindergarten classes, that's 8 classes altogether, so tomorrow package hog will come to the library. 2 classes at 9, 2 classes at 10. So we literally have them, we split them, one half is in the children's room, and they do a tour, and they choose a book. The other half is in here, we read a story, and we just kind of discuss the library and some different things, do a little activity with them, and then we swap, so it's kind of like we're in Central Station. And after they get their book, they come to the circulation desk and they get their card. So I thought you might like to see what we hand out to them. So they each get their book bags, it's got their name on it and their teacher's name. And in these book bags, they have, so we always create literacy sheets for all programs, so there's quite a few here. There's mazes and word searches and different things here. A notebook, there's a bouncy ball, and there's a bracelet that's got something to do about reading. In addition, so they'll get these packets, there's a welcome letter from me, there's the museum passes and how to install their card on phone and a couple other things. And then they get their cards, and it says my first library card, and so they get their cards here. So they will all get these. I think we had, so that's 147 new registrations for the Auburn Public Library through these 2 schools. And 172 visitors in addition to aides and teachers will be here tomorrow. So, busy.
That's excellent. I love that you have these programs to get the kids really engaged, you know, at a young age and start loving the library.
Right. We had been doing it, you know, for a while. Then with the pandemic, they weren't able to. Last year, we gave them a lot of book bags, and we did first grade and kindergarten, and we had a lot more things in the bags they couldn't come. So, and we recorded stories and so forth. So there was a lot of attention to the stories that we put online too. So we're staying connected with our community.
Can I just ask you a question? Zach's mother, Allison, well, I didn't realize, as I said, that they were related to each other, but when she came up when I was talking to Zach about just his work and what he's doing, she talked about a really neat program that was Halloween themed, but it was it was inclusive of teenagers. She was really excited about that. And I wanted to say something about it, but I can't remember what she said. It was really neat. Teenager, was she talking about the kids program, or was there something related?
Well, Halloween is all ages, and we have teens who come to programs. We have teens who visit the library. So
Okay.
it was a family program.
Oh,
So
I see.
Really, there were all ages.
Okay, okay. I thought it was the way that she phrased it. I thought it was something that was specific to teen attend, you know, targeting teens. Okay, thank you. She was very happy with it.
So just to mention, the Auburn Post Office will be using the history room again in the parking lot for a job fair. Under visitors too, I don't know if I added it here. So we also had welcomed a special needs group from the high school, the RISE program. So we created a whole program on kind of little notice, but I was so happy that they contacted me. So we had them come here for about an hour. We brought them in here and read story, then they did a craft. We brought them to the children's room, and we brought the iPads so we could help them find what they were looking for, so they get to, you know, wander around the children's room and choose some books. And they also got library cards. So we, and I, you know, more than happy to have them come back. That was their kind of first visit as a group, and the aides, and so you know, that was great. We were all involved in that as well.
I think that's what Mrs. DeLuca was talking about, because she's a special
Maybe
educator
teens, because
at the
they're
high
all
school.
ages, but
Yeah, maybe I just
they're
misunderstood. She loved it.
Just as a mention, MBLC, so we have always been more than accountable in compliance with our hours. We never really suspended hours except during COVID when everybody was. But they're now, open hours requirement is now off suspension, so everybody's required now to be up to, the hours that they required. So again, we are fine. We're required to be open 50 hours, we're open 51, but more than that, that's only required 38 weeks out of the year. And we do it all year long, always. We're open nights, Saturdays, we don't reduce that at all. So that's now, we have to be in compliance again for the state financial aid. Grants, so the Young Scientist, we just finished one session, that I will apply again. I think the next one is gonna be in January. I also submitted 6 grants to the Cultural Council. I won't hear from, I think it'll be a month or 2 before we hear about that. So I attended a conference, put on by NELA, New England Library Association, that was on, Saturday the 22nd, in Manchester, New Hampshire. So it was an excellent conference, a lot about legal issues, a lot about room policies, public forum, non-public forum, designated public forum, and I think there's some things that we need to probably consider, which I made a note as, looking at the Merriam Room policy as well. So there was, again, a lot of information. It was all day, and it was very well run, so there was a stack of information like this that I have reference to. Very, very internationally well-known presenter who is a PhD in librarianship, is also an attorney who specializes in libraries. So there's a fairly small group. It was limited. It was full from how many they offered. So I think that there's a lot of things that I'm going to be able to draw from as we continue, looking at the Merriam policy, looking at policies for the sunroom. It's really important that you have that language in there correctly.
Give me some idea what you mean by that.
Pardon me?
Some idea what you mean by that. For example, in Merriam, what would have to change with that policy?
Well, I'll go through that, maybe make some suggestions. We don't have to change it, it's a good policy. Some things we might want to consider putting in there or not, like rallies and things like that, So those kinds of things we might want to just consider where we want to put that in, because if you don't, or you're inconsistent, then you can be legally, State aid financial report, so I did send that. Does anybody have any comments or anything on that?
I did have a question on that. On line E1, trust and endowment income, is that from the Norma card?
It's from, I got those from Ed, so those are from all of the ones that are still, there are still funds in there.
Yeah, I think,
So
the expenditure
It's more than-
probably must be
there were-
Norma
I think
card.
there's 4 or 5 of them still.
Yeah.
Well, mostly the Norma card.
Yeah. And when it says on K100, I don't know what page that is, but K100, no, that's not the one. I'll have to see what, I thought I had that circled, but that's not the thing I was actually looking at. I was trying to understand something about expenditures from other town departments or something involved in. Is that what DPW does?
So that's broken down a little bit differently. One of them is reported here, an expenditure by DPW for the daily maintenance when they come vacuum into the trash and fill dispensers and so forth. So that's listed separately. The other ones are heat. We have, for instance, we have $4,500 every year that's put into our budget for heat. If it goes beyond that, that's paid by the town budgets.
Okay.
So there's postage, there's telephone, there's all of those other things that I can give you a list of them if you want, because I had to go through and document. That's all, I add all that up and code it because they'll also be in different categories. So those are things that are paid not from our appropriations, but for the town, for the library.
Because I know DPW does a lot of work, and I just wonder if that's what shows.
Yeah, so that's split in a couple of different ways.
Thank you.
And we are fully in compliance, so I don't anticipate any concerns. We'll hear in January what our award will be. Bill schedules, any questions about the bill schedules?
Yeah, Bemis went up, huh? From $500?
Bemis?
Yeah.
It's always a little bit different. It depends on the craft. So she works with us very well. A lot of times she gives us, materials at cost. So sometimes I send her a picture and I'll say, we would like to do this, but I don't want to do the same thing that the other towns are doing.
Yeah.
So I want you to turn it around and do this and make it a little bit smaller so the materials don't cost as much. So she always does that. But every craft is different, materials cost, so it's never a set amount. And it depends on how many people we can fit in the room. The bigger the craft, the fewer the number of people we can fit. So we do as much as we can, and sometimes I have 2 sessions. If I do, then she can decrease the amount a little bit because they're back to back, so that they only have to come out once. So there's a number of things that we look at.
Yeah, how many people are usually involved in those programs?
Well, they fill in about 20 minutes, so 25 at the last one. And I literally had people calling all day right up until then to see if there were any spots, if anybody. But I actually had to close off the wait list as well because there were too many people. And everybody showed, so there were no openings.
Thank you. Well, there was one other question. I just wondered what it was. Penworthy, what is that? Or Penworthy?
That's a vendor, children's books.
Children's books, okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I have a question, I don't know if it goes in this section, because I'm new, so I'm gonna play the new card. But I'm genuinely curious, I saw on one of the Auburn groups, and there was like 3, so I can't remember which, but not the one I searched today, so at least I can rule one out, where somebody had posted a flyer from the Oxford Library, and they were offering programs for young adults around things like how to make a budget, and a couple of affiliated things, that's the only one I remember, and it was posted in the Auburn group, like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had something like that here? And there were people going like, yeah, I wish we had something. And I was gonna look for it just to kind of see what sort of response it generated. So I know we do craft things. Do we ever do other things?
We have actually done that program.
Oh.
We have very few respondents.
Oh, wow.
So yes, we certainly do too. Sometime when you're here, I will show you the book that we have. Actually, we had 2 books because there's too many. So I keep a flyer from every program. We have a lot of educational programs as well.
Excellent.
And we actually did have that one, and it was not well attended.
All right, so a lot of people
So-
claiming they would come now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to get the teens in.
Well,
Well, and don't forget, we've been closed down for 2 years.
Yeah.
We're still ramping back up.
Yeah.
We're still ramping back up with staffing, and our audience right now is children, and children bring in other people.
Right.
Programs drive circulation, so we've
Right.
got to go with where we're at right now. In fact, the program budget is already almost depleted for this year.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go to finance committee and see if I can, ask for budget transfer so I can continue to, we do a lot in-house.
Yes.
So that we can keep costs down, but there's certainly, we do a lot of educational ones as well. But I'm always looking for, the Friends brought that up as well, so, because they saw the flyer. But can I just add, a lot of other libraries are looking at our flyers and saying,
Yeah.
why don't we do that, so.
Right,
That works
we're
both ways.
told. It's funny, it was adults that were responding to
Yes,
that, right?
that's
Because
right.
sometimes as a teen, you don't really get that this is gonna matter, and then as an adult, you're like, I really should have paid attention.
Yeah.
well, we might want to think about how we advertise some of those programs as well.
Right,
I
that's
think
another thing.
people are used to expecting the way that they learn about children's programs, and maybe we have to do something different about that with young adults or adults.
Yeah, but I think the programs you guys have are excellent, like, I love hearing about this stuff. And agreed on children driving a lot of traffic.
Any other comments or questions? Excellent job. So we are at item number 6, trustee questions and comments. The first piece is an update on the APL policies and procedures collection policy. Do you want to start, Matt?
I don't know, I have a few copies here now. This did not come out back to back. So, and there are plenty of pages on this, it's 11. But I don't know if anyone needs a copy of this.
Yeah, why don't we just pass them on?
I didn't read it online.
Neat. Excellent, thank you, Matt. Appreciate
A
you.
lot of work.
And,
They do, thank
Okay.
you.
okay.
Great.
And then, this is a little piece that you mentioned, it's an addendum, and it's the one on citizens' request for reconsideration of library materials, but I'm wondering if we ought to just hold it, addendums, all the addendums, like some of the other things that we have, that we state that
Yeah,
will be addended, to just save those. But this is the one that you had from Brookline
yep.
with a couple of changes. I just passed these out, but I know that we'll do these separately.
Great, oh, thank you, Matt, I'm sorry.
I think I have an extra one down there.
Oh, there's an extra one here.
Oh, I just needed to get my stretching in.
Show off. This was started some years ago, and then other things came up. And so Vera and Mary and I have worked on this. We had 4 meetings, 3 meetings. And then we took, if you look on page 2 at the top, you can see the libraries that we looked at. These were the best policies that we found. And those are the ones that are listed. They were the most comprehensive. They had everything in them. And so on page 2, it's not page, number didn't come out either. I had every page with line numbers, as well as, and I don't know why they didn't print.
Okay.
But anyhow, the part of the introduction and the responsibility for the collection and development policy, that's pretty standard. On the next page, on the funding, that's pretty standard. Subject areas, that goes from, we've got a couple pages on that. But when we had areas where we were really uncertain about, nothing seemed to come together very well, it's in yellow. And that, we're asked the library director and staff to take a look at that and to see what they thought about those sections. But the ones that are whited, those are the things that we would have recommended. And the same goes then for the selection criteria, selection for children. Then the format section is pretty standard. Library programs and services, that really is for the library director and staff to see how much or how little they want in there. The yellow marks indicate places where we need additional information. And then the community analysis that Vera's working on. That's a pretty standard section in most of the policies. And then it mostly have a section on objections to library materials and what do they do when they disagree about that. My guess is that section would need to be reviewed by town council, because that's where, I guess that's where there's an awful lot of litigation. And then accessibility to materials, that's pretty straightforward. And then the supplemental collection materials, I think it's mostly, everything is compatible with CWMR's information, but that's at least open. And then collection, maintenance, replacement, reading and evaluation, the entire section I think is okay. And the gifts and donations policy, I think we've talked about that before, and I think that it's correct, but we'll see. What we really need is for some time to take a look at this, for everybody to look at it.
That's how it's going.
I'm sorry?
No, well, it's
A lot.
after hours.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Now, I did notice the numbers are up here in this corner, near the staple.
Every one of the pages?
Yeah.
No, he was referring to the lines of the.
Yeah, but I'm also
Oh,
referring to
you
that,
did.
but
Okay.
I do see that they are there,
Lines. Okay.
yeah. Oh, that would have been helpful earlier. But, we had talked a little bit about it at the subcommittee meeting, about having a meeting in December. It's not a regular scheduled meeting, but we, at the time we changed the meetings, we also said that if we had some particular reason to meet and to work on something, that we would be able to do that. And so I'm hoping that we can have a meeting in December, the first Wednesday in December, and to work on this.
Yeah. So we have one scheduled, you're referring to our regular board meeting, not a subcommittee, is that right?
Right.
Yeah, so we're scheduled to go, did we say that we'd take December off? I thought we
I
said.
think we did.
We
We
did.
did,
We
okay.
did.
January.
Okay.
So I don't know if I have to make a motion for that,
Okay,
but I'd like to make a motion that we, at the December meeting, exclusively deal with this policy.
Can I just ask you before that?
yeah.
I'm sorry?
Can I just ask before that, what are the steps that need to proceed then in order to make that December meeting kind of a decision-making meeting? Because at a minimum, the library director and staff need to have time to review the policy as a whole, focusing on the areas that you highlighted, but not exclusively those.
Correct.
Yeah,
And then I also would agree that at a minimum, town council would need to review at least parts of this. I don't know, do you know, if there are others in the town kind of administration that you think might
Yes.
need to as well?
I think there's definitely, I need time to digest it. There's some things that I think would be a little bit problematic, but I don't want to say because I haven't read the whole thing and look at it in context. So, we had decided not to have meetings in December and January, so I actually am not available on that Wednesday. So, and I will certainly do my best to review this then. I think there, in addition to what you have here, there might be some things that we want to add. And let me add that I appreciate the work that you've done. I told Matt I appreciated him sort of getting the initiative going. So I know that was a lot of work, so I definitely appreciate that. It's very kind of dry. There's some things that, because they fit in another library, don't necessarily fit here. For instance, the self-publishing things, you have to make sure there's room if you're going to do that. There's a whole lot of things that are involved in just accepting self-published books, just as a for instance. So, and I think that definitely, DeMascus would have to look at it. I'm certain that wouldn't happen before January, before
Well-
December or January. And don't forget the town manager is retiring in January, and so transition might have some impact on
Will
availability.
you be able to have your written material before that meeting on that?
I will do my best.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get the goals written, at 10 hours a day, every day. There's a lot of program priorities and a lot of other things, so I will do my best. I do appreciate the work that you put in. When I come with, my recommendations, I want to make sure that I'm coming from a place that's going to kind of align with what you're looking for, and not only the current needs, but the future needs of our library and our town. So,
See, that's what I think we were trying to do, is to really include in this collection development, because we haven't added anything that almost every other library, or many other libraries have, I shouldn't say that, but many other libraries. So it's not like we're looking for brand new things. So I think that we were trying to be very careful with that.
Yeah, I would say on the self-publishing, we did make it kind of tight. So.
yeah, like I said, I only had a chance to skim it, so
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. And I will say, even here, and you've definitely seen variations of this before, something you may not know, people cannot question library materials if they don't live in the town. You can't have somebody from another town coming and trying to look at a book band. And in fact, the book collection is a non-public forum, so technically, they really can't even do that. So it doesn't mean people aren't gonna make noise if they want to. I don't think we have much in our collection that would rise to that level. But there are lots of layers here that, we wanna make sure if we're gonna,
Yeah. No, I think all feedback is great. I still have to put in the demographic data for Auburn. I didn't do that, so sorry.
That's right.
So there's still room to kind of, you know, it's in draft form, right? So we
Right.
still want your feedback, I'll still have the demographics, if there's anything else, or if there's anything important we need to know about the reconsideration. Like, if that's not a thing here, cool. If that is a thing here, I just thought this one was good in the way it asked the questions to make sure
Right.
that the individual had engaged with the material and had read it prior to just opposing it because.
Right, and in fact, if they're not a town resident, they can't do it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So as I mentioned to somebody, if it's an iterative process, and I would assume we would go through that process and maybe have 2 or 3 drafts even before it's finalized and everybody's,
That's fair.
work with the final product, so.
In order to be able to do this better, we should have a copy with the
No.
lines
With the lines numbered, yeah.
numbered, so
That was
that
really
when we
helpful.
do meet in December,
Yeah,
I can print that out.
No, it doesn't. He
Oh.
said that in-
I'll print that out
okay.
and have those available
Mine has-
here at the library.
Now, Jean's
Yeah.
has numbers.
That might be-
Oh.
that was a
Well,
good one.
I think the one, I think the one online did have the lines, and that's the same one I
That's what I-
used to print, and it didn't print.
Didn't do
So I must have made some kind of mistake on that, but I'll make sure that we have copies with that.
it. We'll give that one to Matt.
I've got notes.
No, I've got one at home.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'll send you the demographic data before then, so don't, don't reprint until we get
Okay.
that in there.
Okay. All
So
right.
I would echo Jean's comments that, I mean, this is an impressive piece of work, so thanks to you guys in
Yeah.
the 3 meetings and the investment of time. I think that we do still have several steps that we need to go through and want to do it right. And my own personal sense is December 7th is overly ambitious to get all that done.
Yeah.
And while it's always good to get things done, I don't know that there's anything that drives us to rush it. So if we took our time and kind of handled this in the new year, I think that's sufficient. That's just my own view.
Well, I think I was hearing 2 things, so I just want to make sure. So we had agreed to take off December and January. So the first question is, do we want to meet as a board? I know that Jean can't make it, but we can meet as a board in December formally. And then my second question was, if not, does the subcommittee want to meet to further refine the process
See, I'd rather have the feedback
from the whole team?
everybody else
Okay,
before we do any more
move
work.
forward, okay,
So I'd like to have that meeting in December,
okay.
and we can do the best we can. If we get through 5 pages, that's fine. If we get through more than that, that's fine. So
Okay.
I'd make that motion to have the meeting in December.
Okay, so I have one motion. Do I have anybody to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, that's second. Just gonna do a quick roll call. My roll call sheet, where are you? Here you are. So Matt Toth is a yes?
Yes.
Can I just, so the motion is to have a meeting on December 7th for the explicit purpose of reviewing the collection policy and
well
not
said.
to conduct any other business.
Any other
Correct.
business? So I'm sorry. Suzette?
Yes? I
Yes.
second.
John?
No.
Okay. Vera?
Yes.
And I say yes. We have, so we have enough, we have 1 negative vote, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we meet that?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure, I'm a new
Yeah,
chair.
right, like, even if you only look at the yellow areas, or if there's anything else that catches your eye, and you're like, this is a no-go, but I don't have time for all the other pages, like, that's okay, it just gives us something to work with on that, and we'll take in the rest of the board's feedback, because it's a, it's a draft process,
Yeah, it
we
is.
will go through a few.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. If there's something I think that's really, we probably don't want to delve into that, I can at least let you know that.
Yeah.
I won't be prepared to, but then you won't spend time on that. Off the bat, sort of, I was questioning why we would have anything in here about programs.
Because everybody's got programs, but
But like I said, I haven't read the whole thing, and then maybe I took it
Yeah.
out of context, but I didn't understand why that would be in there.
it was,
7 and 8.
So, thank you.
so just for a little bit of context, as we looked at other libraries, I mean, Matt put together a whole bunch of it. Like, I looked at Brookline's, their policy is like maybe 4 pages, right? And other policies that libraries have are really comprehensive and hit every point just to make sure to like cut out, So he said we tried to hit a middle ground where we covered all the bases, but not too hard.
Right.
any other comments about that? The next thing on the agenda, the next piece on the agenda is the APLSP, lessons learned. Does anybody want to take the lead on that? Auburn Public Library Strategic Plan, lessons learned. We can also table that until February if you,
Yeah, from my recollection of previous discussion on that, Matt presented us the lessons learned document.
okay.
And in the discussion, it seemed to me that our only kind of pending issue was to develop a timeline
Yeah.
for, or to discuss or develop a timeline for the development of the next strategic plan.
Okay.
So, I don't know if there's any other pending business.
No, because that would start in twenty-four.
You, right. Right. 23.
You know, would you want to start it in twenty-four for twenty-five? Because this goes through twenty-five.
Sorry, I just don't understand what you're
The
asking me.
the strategic plan goes until twenty-five.
That's correct.
So John's talking about a timeline,
Right,
and I just said probably it has to start by January of twenty-four.
that's right, that's right.
So if there's nothing that this board has to do before we expire in May,
Mhm.
No.
then we can probably, I would say, table this or consider this agenda item closed. We had a discussion, we had the presentation on the strategic plan,
Mhm.
we reviewed the lessons learned, we discussed whether there was any action for us, and if we come to the decision there's no more action for us, then I think we don't need to revisit this again.
The lessons learned would have to be reviewed when the whole process starts.
Yeah,
That's, I don't know.
okay. Very good, so we'll table that for right now, and then just lastly, update on strategic plan and progress toward meeting goals. Does anybody have any questions?
You know,
Is there any updates, Jean?
I do not have an update today.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just under old new business.
Yep.
Any progress on finding a sixth member to
Yes.
fill the board?
I did reach out to the town manager's secretaries, Sharon, and asked if they would re-advertise, as well as the board of, the new chair of the board, which is Mr. Wren. So I did reach out, I'll reach out again. I'm also going to reach out, I would like an email address. I heard you say yes, Suzette. Did you want one?
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, you said you'll wait and see. John, did you have any
So,
preference?
so my understanding is what you're looking to do is to publish a contact email
Correct,
for whoever wants it.
correct.
So yeah, I'll provide an
Okay.
email address.
Okay, great, great.
No one ever has any trouble contacting me.
No. That's fair, that's a fair assessment. So if we have no other business, can I have a motion to end the meeting at 7, do you have 54, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, 7:54, do I have a motion?
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, very good, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.